Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we'd love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Frank Pisani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good. I'm looking forward to chatting to you about. I always mess that up every single time,
It's
but
quite all right.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you about this because I really like this one.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking all about Cool Runnings. Why did we pick it? Honestly, this was like I was scrolling through Disney Plus, and they had like a basically like a because of the Winter Olympics kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, let's do something in honor of the Winter Olympics. Sure, why not? Cool Runnings. It's been one that's kind of been on the like, oh, we'll get to that one eventually list for a while. And I figured, yeah, sure. Now can be the time. So a little bit of history here for Cool Runnings. Originally released October 1st, 1993. I was 8 years old. You were well before
Fine.
your birth, right, Frank?
Yeah, it was a few years before me.
Yeah. Other releases of the time, going back to June of that year, June 11th, gave us Jurassic Park, of course, iconic film. August 6th was The Fugitive. August 13th was The Secret Garden. August 20th was Surf Ninjas, which is a staple of my childhood.
It's
September
classic.
yeah, classic. It was like Surf Ninjas and Three Ninjas. It was like
Yep.
there was just a very brief window of time there where people were like, "Yep, let's just kids love ninjas. Let's just make kids ninjas and see how that plays out."
I watched Three Ninjas for the first time last year because
Uh-huh.
apparently I had only ever seen Three Ninjas Strike Back. And I had never seen the first one. And the whole movie, I was like, when did they get dirt bikes? Like, I'm waiting for this dirt bike scene that I remember vividly, and it's not in the movie. And I was like, apparently I've never seen this movie. Damn.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Three Ninjas is the one where like one of them basically sees the future, but through a Game Gear, right?
No, Three Ninjas is the one where they get like held up like Home Alone by like some incompetent people, and then they use their ninja skills, and they're all different colors to like fight them off. I don't remember there being any kind of like Game Gear, but I might have just forgot. Maybe there was.
That's like I feel like each of the three ninjas had like a power, and like one of them was like something something, but like one of them could see the future, but like it was through his Game Gear or something like that. Let me now
Because it had to be really 1990s.
exactly. Now I need to see if I'm thinking of the right thing. Um. Oh shoot. Yeah, I think that's right.
It
Da, 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 da,
sounds
da.
like it definitely would fit the Three Ninjas vibe, especially because like I guess if they made it a few years later, he'd be like, "Let me look into my virtual boy and like see the future."
Right? Oh, come on. Come on, Wikipedia, don't fail me on this. All right, whatever. I could be thinking of the wrong movie, or I could be like mixing up movies in my head. Anyway, whatever. There was Three Ninjas. Surf Ninjas was what came out here. September 24th also was The Good Son. A week following this one, on October 8th, we had the doubleheader of Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Mr. Nanny with Hulk Hogan.
Oh, damn, that's a
Uh,
great weekend for cinema.
October was a great weekend for like inspirational sports stories because October 13th gave us Rudy.
Oh
Uh,
wow, yeah,
October 15th was the Beverly Hillbillies kind of movie remake with Jim Varney and like Diedrich Bader. Um,
I love that movie.
yeah. And then the last one I have on here, October 29th, was The Nightmare Before Christmas. So, busy 1993.
It
Uh,
is really funny because if you had asked me before, did all these movies come out in the same year? I'd be like, no, of course not. They all feel like they're wildly different, and then
yeah.
it's like, no, this is all one year.
Yeah, 93 was wild. Has a pretty brief runtime of only 1 hour and 38 minutes. In the Disney live action timeline of things, we had going back to December of the prior year, December 11th, 1992 was when A Muppet Christmas Carol came out. You can go catch a Disney Plus show on that. February of 93 gave us Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey. March 12th, 93 gave us A Far Off Place, which I do not know anything or do not remember anything about. Uh,
Same.
April 2nd, 1993 was The Adventures of Huck Finn. July 16th of 1993 was Hocus Pocus. Then we had Cool Runnings here, October 1st. And then following Cool Runnings was The Three Musketeers on November 12th of 1993. January 14th, 1994 was Iron Will. February 11th was of 1994 was Blank Check, which is another one we've done a D plus show on. And March 25th, 1994 is when D2 The Mighty Ducks came out.
Oh, hell yeah.
Basically wanted to like stretch it out to go like here's a great one that we did a D plus show on, and then here's a not great one, or like not terrible. It's not D3. D3 was
Exactly.
terrible, but like D2 The Mighty Ducks was like this isn't as good as the original Mighty Ducks. But we've also done D plus show on that.
That's one of those where they knocked it out of the park, and then it's like, okay, we'll do it again, or like go for the full like I don't know baseball, so I was going to try to say the clearing all the plates thing, but I don't forget what it's called. But it's like or was it Grand Slam? Yeah, exactly. That's like where they're like, okay, get a Grand Slam now, and you're like, all right, well that's like a lot harder, and then it's just try to repeat it, and then they try to go for a third time, and it's just that is definitely the well of diminishing returns for the like the Mighty Ducks franchise.
Yeah. All right, so I need to look at Three Ninjas again because our director, because I need to figure out what's going on here. Our director for this is John Turteltaub, who also directed prior to Cool Runnings. He directed Three Ninjas.
I mean, he has a great catalog of work. Like, I am a fan of his movies, so like I now I got to double check. Is he still actively making anything?
His most recent, like he did National Treasure was one of his as well.
Dude, this guy's awesome.
Yeah,
this guy has nothing but great movies.
He hasn't done a ton recently. All right, I think I'm just thinking of some other movie then, because I'm not seeing any references to like Game Gear here. Or let me just look and see, like Three Ninjas Game Gear ? Game.
There definitely might be a Game Gear in the movie at some point because that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I guess it's like the thing I'm thinking of. Oh, yeah, no, it's Surf Ninjas. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. In Surf Ninjas, like they end up playing the game for Surf Ninjas, I guess. I don't know. Ninja movies in the 90s were weird. Anyway, John Turteltaub, prior to this, directed Three Ninjas. He also would go on to direct While You Were Sleeping, Phenomenon, The Kid, and National Treasure. The writers for this film, we had Lynn Seifert. She wrote the story and screenplay. She didn't have a ton else in her IMDb, just a few miscellaneous other projects. Michael Ritchie, who worked with on the story with her, also had like 2 other miscellaneous projects in writing. And then we had a writing team of Tommy Swerdlow and Michael Goldberg writing on the screenplay. This was their debut, but they would also go on to tag team the movies Little Giants, Bushwhacked, and Snow Dogs. And then Tommy Swerdlow also wrote on the 2018 version of The Grinch with Benedict Cumberbatch in the title role, animated version. Starring, we have one name, Leon, as Darius Bannock. He's also worked on the films Above the Rim, The Temptations, and Little Richard. Dougie Doug was Sanka Coffee. I remember him being like one of the guys in like that like pocket of time, because he was also like right after this he did Operation Dumbo Drop. He was in the That Darn Cat remake with Christina Ricci. He was on the Cosby Show, or on Cosby, for many years. He was also in the film Eight-Legged Freaks. Raul D. Lewis, playing Junior Bevel, was also in Spy Hard, K-Pax, and I don't remember if this was a movie or a show, but something called Poet Heads. Malik Yoba, playing Yul Brenner. This was his debut. He would go on to be a recurring character on New York Undercover series for many years. He was also in Empire and Designated Survivor on the TV landscape most recently. John Candy as Irv, of course, best known from things like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Spaceballs, Uncle Buck, Home Alone, Rescuers Down Under, and Rookie of the Year in the lead up to this. And then this was actually one of the little trivia things is this was the last film released before he passed. His final two films, Wagons East and Canadian Bacon, were released posthumously. And then Raymond J. Barry playing Kurt Hemphill, kind of the bad guy ish. He basically blocks the team for one or two scenes, and then it's like, all right, fine. Like gets in on the close slow cut at the end. He's basically one of those guys, one of those character actors. Prior to this, he'd been in the movie Falling Down, and would go on to be in things like Training Day, Just Married, Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story, the series Justified, as well as the series The 100. And then lastly, I pulled in here Al Troutwig and John Morgan as themselves. They are the Olympics sportcasters, kind of giving the realism kind of feel to a lot of those scenes.
I wondered that, like, because I never really watched the Olympics, especially back in like the 80s and the 90s. So when these dudes, I was like, those must be the real announcers, right? Especially when they gave them so much like screen time and like lines. I was like, those must be like the real Olympic announcers that they pulled in here.
Yeah, this is pretty much all they have in terms of their credits. But yeah, both doing a quick Google search of both of them, it was they're basically sportscasters, broadcasters for NBC, ABC, CBS, kind of those things over the years. So yep, I think one of them specifically was a bobsled, correspondent expert kind of thing. Some trivia for you. At the time, this was the highest grossing live action film released under the Walt Disney Pictures banner. So shout out to 1993 where high grossing movies had not been a thing yet. Contrary to the story in the movie, the Jamaican team was actually met with open arms by the international bobsledding teams. One of the other teams even went so far as to lend the Jamaican team a backup sled so they could qualify. So they didn't have to really face adversity, and that's just kind of movie fakery. As I said, this was the final John Candy film to be released before he died of a heart attack. Candy died 5 months later while filming Wagons East, which would be released posthumously. In the sport of bobsledding, adding weight to the sled is perfectly legal. In fact, sometimes it's a safety measure. Both 2- and 4-man sleds have minimum and maximum weights. The weight of the sled is calculated as the total weight of the sled and its crew. If the fully loaded sled weighs less than the minimum, it is perfectly legal to add weight to make up the difference. So I guess maybe they just don't go into this or whatever, but if they really want to say oh, he cheated by adding weight, maybe he cheated and pushed it past the maximum, weight load or whatever. But yeah. In 2015, Dougie Doug revealed that he still has Sanka's lucky eggs. They were made of rubber.
That's awesome. I never even thought about that, but that's so funny that he just kept them for just 25 years.
Yeah, just kept a little prop. The Jamaican bobsledder characters in the movie were all fictional characterizations and were not based on their real life counterparts. John Candy's Irv Blitzer coach character is also fictional. This was a fun what if casting. Disney envisioned the original cast with Denzel Washington as Doris, Eddie Murphy as Sanka, Wesley Snipes as Yule, and Marlon Wayans as Junior, and still John Candy as Irving Blitzer. Additionally, Tupac Shakur auditioned for a role in this movie.
That would all be wild. And I'm sure I would still be down to see it, but that's just funny to me that the parallel universe that could have been.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely each of those actors definitely fits each of those character types. Wesley Snipes as a Yul Brenner would be oh yeah, he's scary. And yeah,
and
Eddie
you could
Murphy
totally
would
see
definitely have
Marlon
fun
Wayans
as,
even.
yeah, Marlon Wayans, I would say could have either been Sanka or Junior. I think this would have been early enough in his career. This would have been in Living Color days kind of thing. So Junior would have also made sense. But yeah. the crash scene at the end of the movie, except for the close-up shots, was real footage of the actual Jamaican bobsled team crash from the 1988 Winter Olympic Games. And lastly, contrary to the movie, the infamous crash wasn't due to mechanical error, but more or less losing control of the sled at such a high speed. Like there was an investigation kind of thing into it, and it was like, no, it's probably just that he was too inexperienced to be driving it going that fast.
That
Yeah,
was one I was like interested in because I didn't look up a ton of the facts ahead of time, but when watching it, when it gets to that footage, I was like, that's definitely like the real crash footage.
hmm
Because even the dude on the one shot, his head is like vertical against the wall and is like sliding and it's like bent. And then when it cuts to them in the actors, they're like laying on the ground. And I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely like because you would never put a guy in that situation to film like that
yeah,
even for like a thing. So I was like, that's definitely like real crash footage of some dude. And I was also like, I am amazed that they did not actually get more hurt, like the dudes,
yeah,
the real bobsled dudes, because that is a gnarly crash.
yeah. I don't remember if I have it in here somewhere, or if it was in the trivia or something. But there was basically like one of the things I saw was like talking about one of the actual bobsledders, like reminiscing back on like it happening, and the smell of the helmet burning from the friction. He basically said like that's a smell you don't forget.
Oh my
um,
God. Yeah.
like so yeah, it's like it's definitely some surreal stuff there.
It's
Um,
it's funny because like a week or two ago, I just saw Jackass Forever, and then watching this bobsled crash, I was like, "Ooh, that's gnarly! Like
yeah.
that's a real crash accident." Like,
I also want to give a shout out to whoever submitted a lot of the IMDb trivia. I don't think gets the spirit of IMDb trivia because they put some stuff in here that are just like things about the internal logic of the movie, i.e., the one that only 3 out of 73 people found interesting. Actor Larry Gilman portrayed a character, Larry, who had the same first name as his own. Yep, that's I don't think I would call that trivia. That's a fact, sure, but that's not really trivia. Similarly, like um, this motion picture's opening title card reads Jamaica, November 1987. It's like, okay, sure. Or yeah, the nicknames of Coach Irving Blitzer were Irv and Sled God. Okay, you're just describing things that happen in the movie and not adding anything to them. So yeah, just it was a very weird mix of trivia from IMDb on this one. But with
I
all
really
that,
love that because that's definitely that subreddit. I don't know if you've seen it, shitty movie details. Like that is full in that territory
yeah,
of like, well, you're not wrong, but that's not like trivia. You're just stating a fact, like
yeah,
or something you saw in the movie.
yeah. There was one thing that was basically like, oh, what was it? It was like Irving is like Irv basically says he won 2 gold medals and broke 9 records. It's like, yes, he does say that in the movie. That's how is that trivia? What is that? Why? What are you doing? What are you doing, person who submitted this? Yeah, weird little things there. But anyway, so what did you think, Frank? How does the movie hold up?
Yeah, so I think I spoiled it a little bit, but I think this movie's great. Like even still to this day, like I had I've s- I was thinking back and I couldn't remember the first time I've ever seen this movie. It's just one of those I always just remember being a thing and being there. But even over the last couple of years, I've like rewatched this movie. Like it was on Netflix before it was on Disney Plus, and there's a couple of these weird old movies like Smart House and Blank Check and like Cool Runnings that I went back and watched on Netflix. And so it's like still somewhat more recent in my memory than some of the other things we've gone back to, and I was like, "Yeah, I remember it holding up," but I actually enjoyed it, I think, a little bit more this viewing even than I did the last couple times because like, there's multiple jokes I did think that's actually funny. There's actual even, like I really appreciate the characters and the way they're able to, like, develop them and build them, and then one of the only problems I really have with it is that, the conflicts that, like, they introduce are, like, immediately resolved in, like, within the next scene, and they do it, like, 8 times, and I'm like, "Man, you're really, like" there's no, like, the conflict is them in the Olympics, which I guess is, like, the main focus, but then they add, like, "Oh, here's Kurt, the bad guy," and, "Oh, he got they got disqualified," but not really, John Candy got it back in the next scene. Like, it's like every scene that it just undoes like whatever the conflict before was. And
Mhm.
like, I mean, that's me being like critical about it, but it's like I still think even with that, it's like a legitimately fun, great like sports movie. That and this is also I hadn't really thought about it like that up until right now, but it's like this is a cool one that this is a sports movie and you could not like sports. Like you could not care about sports or bobsledding or anything, but you could still just really have a fun, cool, enjoyable time with this one.
Yeah, it's I mean, it very much fits that, like, sports movie mold of, like, we're gonna tell you an inspirational tale of a team overcoming adversity, and it's that plus comedy because it's like, "Hey, the central premise of this is Jamaicans aren't that's not a winter sports kind of country, and so, we're gonna do that. We're gonna have these guys who, like, ideally wanted to be summer sports athletes running in the Olympics. They don't make the cut there because of junior tripping and whatnot. And so they find this as like their alternative. And then it just kind of leans into every like sports movie trope of let's overcome adversity. Let's we're gonna have to put the team together. We're gonna have to work together. But it is very much like, I mean, it's an hour and 40-minute movie. It's running at a brisk pace, and it's also like, I think it's probably much more geared towards kids. So it's
Yeah.
not like they're not trying to be like the gritty version, the gritty true story of Cool Runnings. It is very much like, okay, this guy's conflict is he wants to be an athlete, but his dad doesn't want him to be an athlete. His dad wants him to go to business school or whatever, and that's going to be his conflict. That's the thing he's going to have to deal with. And we're also going to give him the like self confidence thing.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and we're gonna make Yul Brenner. His thing is gonna be he's not a part of a team, but by the end he's happy to be part of the team, and Doris is gonna be the leader, and Sanka's just gonna be kind of the comic relief. And so like they kind of everybody fits into like their mold, and even the bad guys are gonna be the bad guy because they're oh, this is a thing that's different, so we're going to make fun of it, but we're going to turn around and start a slow clap by the end of it, because we admire their grit and the fortitude of these guys who they couldn't finish the race, but they're going to finish the race, kind of thing. So it was, yeah, it's very much like, especially like through the lens of now, it is very much a like by the numbers kind of like, you know let's hit A, B, and C, those kind of story beats. Let's get them together, let's have them qualify, and then it's going to be like the what how well do they actually do in the Olympics. If anything, I was more almost disappointed in reading the trivia and seeing that like so much of this is more fictionalized account of things, because this very much like, as a kid I was fooled by the like based on a true story, and obviously it is very very loosely based on a true story of there were Jamaican bobsledders and they did crash in their third run in the Olympics. But like one of the things in the trivia was basically like they were nowhere near medaling. Like in their first, couple runs, they were in like they were in like 24th out of 26, I think. And then in their second run, I think they got basically last. I think it basically had like the last three times of like the qualifiers of the qualified people, and because their sled just wasn't in a condition after the crash, they just didn't do the fourth run that they could have done to try and like to really try and like come back and medal, but they just didn't. um and so it's like, okay, like whereas this is like they might be able to pull it off, except for that crash. But it's still like it's still a fun story, it's still a fun like and a fun like inspirational kind of ending of they crash and it sucks. Wasn't like the movie doesn't say it was anything to of their doing it. The movie puts it on equipment failure and the bobsled falling apart, but they still have the determination to like finish this race on their own terms kind of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a fun one for me, and like I had forgotten just how many like fun one-liners and stuff, that I like that immediately start coming back, like the recurring thing of like, "Sanka, you dead?" "Yeah, man." Um, that like, that just as a recurring theme, and I really enjoy the budding friendship between Yulbrynner and Junior,
Yeah,
like in the
that's like a
especially in
highlight
like
for
the
me.
bar scene and stuff. Yeah. What were some of your favorite moments from the film?
Well, that's definitely one of them, and it was funny because I never all the times I've seen it before, that's never really hit me the same way it did this time, but I was like it really struck me this time where I'm like, "Man, Yule is like the hard ass who just wants out of Jamaica, doesn't want anything to do with these guys, and if anything, he's mad that Junior screwed him over." And then they come together, and he gives him this, like, awesome scene of well, it's not even like it's before that, he's already trying to, like, help him and pep talk him, and then
Mhm.
when the Germans are giving him shit, he stands up for him,
Yeah.
and then it's like he takes him in the bathroom and gives him this whole walkthrough of like this whole like, "You know what I see? I see pride. I see power." Like, and that's not and he's like, "You really see all that?" And then he just goes back out there and it gets in this crazy bar fight. Like, that's
Mhm.
totally one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. And then even Darius just so mad at after them where he's like, "What is wrong with you guys?" Like, um that's, like, definitely one of my favorite parts, and to your point too about the, like, the one-liners that there's a ton of those that are really good, but the one that I thought was really funny and was like, "Oh, this is one of those, like, more adult jokes they slipped in because it's a kid movie," is, like, when it's cold and they're still, like, waiting for the bus, and he's like, and he asks him, he's like, "What are you smoking?" And he's like, "Nothing." And he's like, "'Cause it's just the
Oh,
cold, like,
yeah, yeah.
breath." But it's just funny to have this Rasta dude with, like, the dreads, and he's all cold, and he's just like, "No, I'm not smoking nothing, man," but it's just these huge, like, clouds.
Mhm.
Like, I thought that was, like I definitely that's, like, a dumb joke, but that's one that I was like, "That's really funny," and especially just for, like, a kid's movie, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those, like, I think the stereotype of, like, the Rastafarian, like, was what like, I mean, like, Bob Marley had well established that, like, there were going to be puffs of weed, and even before I knew what weed was, I knew to expect, like, puffs of smoke from that kind of, like, stereotype thing. So I feel like I probably like, I might appreciate that joke a little bit more nowadays, but I definitely think it didn't completely go over my head at the time, when little 8-year-old Trevor was watching this movie for the first time. And then, like, yeah, watching it a lot because this was definitely a movie that, like, was in regular rotation for a good for a good couple of years there, in my early adolescence kinda thing. And yeah, just, like, I mean, even the idea of, like, again, all of the kind of character arcs are very simple, but like
Yeah.
Derice becoming so enamored with bobsledding and like basically coveting what like the Swiss have, and so he's trying to like lead his team like the Swiss and doing the Eins Zwei Drei, and then like I love the basically the rest of the team being like, no man, like we gotta be us, we gotta remember who we are, like we are Jamaican, and basically like Sanka kind of having that like come to Jesus moment with him, and so you get like you get kind of their ultimate chant instead at the end, is like just such a
But
fun vibe
yeah.
for this movie. And like just like simple little things like I think when we get like the montage of them training and stuff, and you have like John Candy screaming turn 6, and they all like turn their heads in the bathtub, turn 7, they all they all turn the other way or whatever, like
I feel like the shot of all of them in the bathtub is almost, like, iconic,
mhm,
especially for, like, if you're just talking about this movie, like, I just think of them in, like, the bathtub, and maybe that's just me,
yeah,
but like, I think that was the Netflix photo, was, like, for the thing was, like, them in the bathtub, but I'm like,
mhm,
that's such a funny, like, thing, especially because I think, he, like, goes the wrong way, I think, too, or
mhm,
something, and I'm like, it's such a funny little, like, dumb thing of them, like, practicing.
yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just like I love like all the stuff back on the island too. Like I love the little push cart race we get that just kind of like the introduction to Sanka's character just sets him up as like he's gonna be the fun goofball of the movie. And like he crashes into the shed or whatever, and that's where we get I think the first like Sanka, are you dead, man? Um uh and then we get like like the the introduction of John Candy's character after having like been introduced to the idea that he's like a gold medal athlete kind of thing, and then seeing like John Candy, who like I when I was talking to my family about this week, because I was basically like, oh yeah, I just sat down and watched Cool Running. That's what we're going to talk about this week. Um, and talking about like, I definitely didn't realize at the time, uh, and I probably just didn't like contextualize at the time how close this was to John Candy passing. Um, and it's very much like, oh yeah, John Candy is not in good health in this movie. Like he's a lot bigger and he's, you know, he's giving a good performance still, but like reading, oh, he died 5 months later does not surprise me at all. And it's, you know, it's tragic, of course. Um, but I think there's an element of that physique shot up against like the, you know, gold medalist version of him from 20 years earlier or something is a fun thing. And the introduction of him as like a bookie yelling at the radio, like upset and pissed off that that this horse does like falls back in the race and then smashes the the radio, you know, fun little bit. um
Well, and I liked after that because then when they're talking to him and he just gets up, he doesn't say anything. He just gets up and he grabs another pool cue and like spins
mhm,
it around. They just run away because they
yep,
just like saw him do that. Like that was a fun like continuation of and then even then the next thing is he's actually playing pool and they're trying to like talk to him through the window. Like I
mhm.
was like,
And he
there's a lot of
whacks, yeah,
fun. I was like, there's a lot of just fun in the movie and like little like bits and visual things even like that I think are like funny.
yeah. And it's like it's a good movie for these kinds of like little sports montagey kind of things, because like you have them, um you know, like learning the mechanics and idea of the bobsled, but on their dirt fields and stuff like that back home in Jamaica, like running on the cart on the wheels kind of thing. Like John Candy basically being like, you know, like a good team can do this in 6 seconds. Let's see how you guys do. And like the first time they do it's like 13 or whatever, and then when they finally do it, they also go flying out of control and crash into a police car and stuff. And then you see like John Candy like running after them, 5 6 5 6 or whatever, like, and like, you guys did it. um like there's they do a good job of the like, it's gonna be a montage kind of vibes of this movie, both kind of there in Jamaica, but then also as they're like trying to qualify. And then I think it's like it's interesting, and I feel like I remember this being a bigger part of the movie growing up, but the idea of like, you know, Irv's past as like a cheater coming back to haunt him and whatnot, and like disgracing at the, like, I even feel like I remember like I thought at some point he weighed like I thought I have a memory, and so
Dude,
maybe this is
same.
from some other movie or something like that, where like he actually put weights in their bobsled, and that was like what fucked things up or something at the end.
I
But
thought it was
obviously
like
not there.
somebody was trying to screw him over and like they put weights in it and then they find it and then they were like and then it's like a thing between Darius and him where he's like, "What, like you didn't think we could win? You had to weight the bobsled again?" And it was and then none of that happens and I'm like, "What the hell am I thinking about?" Like
Yeah,
am I just making up conflict for
yeah.
this cool runnings easygoing bobsled movie?
Yeah, because it's I joked before we started recording, but it's I between this and On Her Majesty's Secret Service recently, which I watched obviously for that Bond show, I feel like I've seen the two most iconic bobsled scenes or bobsled like elements in cinema. So yeah, it's definitely a okay. What is that memory from? What am I thinking of in that in that case? Like where did they throw weights into a thing to try and like, you know, cheat the system or something? I don't know. Oh, maybe it was a go-kart thing? Now I'm trying to think what that would have been.
With
Like,
Miracle in Lane 2.
I mean, maybe that is one of the recommended movies I think here for yeah, for D plus. But yeah, it was definitely a weird thing. Um, but yeah, like ultimately that conflict like exists for his little bit of growth, and there's like that not even conflict between him and Derice, but like this idea of Derice needing to know like, why did you cheat, man? What, like, winning wasn't good enough for you? Is like, no, like I had to win. That's why I cheated, because I had to keep chasing that. And you know that was wrong. That was the wrong call to make, kind of thing. And so it's like I guess it's a nice little like, oh, he comes to that realization, and he, you know, confronts the rest of the like the panel or whatever, and says like, don't hurt them because of like my crime, you know, from 20 years ago. Like, um, and there was a little bit of trivia of like, yes, the Jamaican team actually was like temporarily disqualified or something like that, but it
Oh,
like
interesting.
I don't remember the details behind it, but it was basically like, yeah, no, they like it was a they were let back in. It was probably more of a clerical thing than anything. Um, so yeah, it's just it's again it's conflict to carry the movie along a little bit to give a it is a lot of you kind of you touched on the idea of like there's conflict that gets introduced and then it almost immediately gets resolved. It's like yeah, they do that, but they do it a lot to kind of like keep it as opposed to like here's the one like overarching conflict of the movie. Because yeah, I mean, especially in this movie archetype or whatever, like the overarching conflict is they're Jamaicans. They shouldn't be successful at bobsledding because that's not a thing that country is known for. And so like the whole movie is basically them trying to overcome that. Even like regardless of if the international community is like making fun of them for it or something like that, it's still that's an internal thing for them to try and like overcome. And by the end of it, they do. They qualify. They try. They didn't medal or anything, but they still like they did their best and they're Olympic athletes. Like
Yeah.
nothing can take that away from them. And I love that like in that regard the whole world got behind them, or at least it's kind of like conveyed that the whole world is getting behind them, and the idea of like the underdogs. And I will say it's like it's an interesting underdog story because they don't ultimately succeed. And
Yeah.
we don't like, I feel like we don't often see those where like they're the underdog and they also still failed. And I guess the success is them finishing the thing at the end. Like they crash, but they're not gonna let that be the end of them. Um, so yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, I'm with you on that because that's definitely something that stood out to me, and I know you'll love this, but it reminds me of Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off
Uh
because
huh.
one of the things there is I think a strong point of that movie for however you feel about it is that like the main character does not win, and it's like he just doesn't win, and it's the same thing. It's maybe done better here, but it's the same thing where it's like I think that's a very interesting thing, like, when you can have them not win and be, like, the heroes at the end, but they're still the heroes and the good guys, and you still told a great story with, like, great characters, and we had fun along the way. Like, I think that's super interesting and also just, like, impressive if you can pull that off, like, where it's just, like, because not that like, so few people do that, right? Like, you were saying, how many movies where they just, like, you build up to it the whole time where they're the underdogs, and then they lose, and it's just like, well, yeah, that's what happened. Like, but here they're gonna go back and they're gonna try again and do whatever. And it's just like I like that about it. So I'm kind of with you there. Although it is like based off of the real world events, it's
Yeah,
just I like that about like it being a movie at least.
yeah. There's also like it also doesn't have that like that staple of this kind of movie of like the end credits and here's what happened to everybody or whatever, and in large part because they're all fictionalized,
Yeah.
which should have been like a clue I guess to young Trevor of like, oh yeah, this is based on a story. It's very loosely based on a story, on a true story. But yeah, like all in all it's a fun movie. Like there are definitely way worse times or way worse ways to spend an hour and 40 minutes. This is probably the first time I've revisited it in God, probably 20-25 years or something like
Oh
that.
wow.
It has probably been quite a while for me for me. But it was still like a fun, good time. And it is amazing sometimes like how many of those things just come back. Like because I remembered very distinctly Sanka's lucky egg and like
Yep.
even the fact that Yule like wants to kiss it at the end being like a thing, like a thing of growth for that character even. But yeah, let's
There's a lot with Yule I actually liked in this movie. For whatever reason, like I really was into that character on like this watch through where I was like he comes in as like this badass kind of hard ass dude, but he really does come around and he gets all these like it's never like necessarily always well, I guess with the bar scene and stuff, but it's not always like they put the camera directly on him. But there's even a line where he calls them his teammates.
mhm.
Like, because in the earlier in the movie, he's so proclaimed, I'm not part of the team. Like, I don't want you. We're on the same team. We're not teammates. Like, and then they never like it's just in there when they're in the hotel room. And I think it's when after the bar scene, and he's like, "What? They were messing with my teammate, and I was supposed to just sit there." And I'm like, "See, that's it though. Is it's like it's all coming together. It's like he's like part of the team." And Even the, Buckingham Palace thing I thought was
Mhm.
cool. Like,
Yeah.
that's a scene I, like, didn't particularly remember, but that's one where, like, he, like, crumples it up and then Junior, like, undoes it and gives it back to him, and he's like, "We'll get you that palace, man." Like, and I'm just like, "See, this is, like, these good character moments that actually, like, made me care about these guys," and, I like seeing them, like, come together and be the team at the end, and I even kinda, like, almost there's a little bit of an angle where, like, they're already kind of a team when they get to the Olympic Village, but then since everyone else is, like, against them, they become, like, more of a team. Because it's
Mhm.
even with the line that I thought was funny from Yule is when the German dude is, like, heckling them when they're in the bobsled, and Irv is like, "He's one of the best drivers in the world," or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, he's also one of the biggest assholes," and,
Mhm.
like, the guys in the bobsled just laugh, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's, like, those cool, like, character teammate moments that are also somewhat, like, real, you know? Like, that's totally, like, what like the dudes would do if everyone was just like you're the outcasts, right? Like you're just gonna like band together and become tighter.
Yeah. It is like it is it's definitely one of those things I feel like I mean, like, especially tying it to like D2 the Mighty Ducks or whatever. It is that same kind of thing of like, we're here, we don't belong here based on the story or whatever. Again, like they were welcomed with welcome with open arms. But it's more dynamic of a story to have them be like having to overcome the odds and like earn the respect of the other people. And so the fact that like they are basically all only by themselves there for like that the training like let's okay we're here in Canada now let's like qualify kind of part of the like basically the second act of the movie. It does give them like those moments to really kind of bond together, and we do get those little scenes, like most notably I think between like Junior and Yule, as well as some scenes between Sanka and Derice. And I think yeah they do a good job of kind of like it's us against the world kind of thing, but they're not trying to like like they're not doing it with any kind of malice towards the other people. They just want to, prove that they belong to be there, that they're just as, worthy of athletes as anybody else. And I will say like I do love the absurdity of the cowboy bar in Calgary. like
Yeah.
uh,
Oh
like
yeah.
especially as like an Arizona native, it's just like this is just silly. Like, yeah, I know a few of these bars around town. I would not have expected a bar like this in the in Calgary for the Olympics kind of thing, but sure, okay.
And somebody definitely says howdy at some point.
Oh yeah.
Like that is in the VO or like in the thing. So I'm like, there's a couple places like that here in Austin. And that is, yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, Calgary? Like
Mhm.
really? Like, and we got full on like 10-gallon hats. The one person has like straw coming
I
out of
mean,
their
yeah,
mouth.
they're
Like,
straight up line dancing,
yeah,
which
yeah,
which
exactly.
again, like that's a funny visual to have Sanka line dancing, um, but it's also like, is that like I guess they're not gonna be like clogging there in the Olympics or something like it so like it is the Winter Olympics are going to be a lot of white people, so let's give them cowboy dancing kind of thing. So sure, okay. Um, but yeah, like overall, it's a fun movie. I think it, and I was surprised by like how well it holds up and how much fun it was. Like even the like even kind of the introduction of Derice, I really like as like he's determined. He's out there working his butt off to try and do this race. And like we see how good he is. Like the town loves him, like all the kids love him when he kind of does this thing. And like he's known and everybody like respects him. And Junior, like is excited to, at the prospect of running in the Olympics alongside him, kind of like qualifying on the team. And if not for, Junior tripping and taking out, Yule and Derice, like what might have been kind of like idea is a like it's like that's another thing that like oh that's a like that's a I feel like it's a trope, but it's one that like is a trope for a reason. It works. it
Yeah.
it gives you this like okay yeah, and especially like when uh John Candy's kind of like doling out the roles, like you're gonna be this, you're gonna be this, and then Sanka's like, I'm the driver, and he's like, you're not the driver, you're the brakeman. No, I'm the driver, and he goes into like, no, the driver needs to be like up before the rest of the team, go to sleep afterwards. They're like they know the turns by heart, they know every inch of that track, all that stuff. They are the leader of this team, is that you, Sanka? And Sanka's like, no, I'll take the breaks. I like that because like that is just again establishing. Obviously, this whole thing is happening because Doris was like, I am determined to go to the Olympics. We've found this option. I'm going to make this happen. So like I appreciate that they set him up as a leader and like the rest of the movie continues to support that. He brings the team together. He, again, decides maybe he wants to be a little too Swiss, but when he is like brought back home to his team, like that just makes them stronger together. So yeah, I think I
It
mean it's good kind of characterization work all around, albeit a little simple.
No, absolutely, and because I was going piggybacking off that a little bit, I love the moment after they've kinda had that discussion and they've kind of finally come into their own, and they show up the last day, and
Hmm.
they come in on the truck singing and, like, making a ton of noise, and they give John Candy the, like, Rasta hat, and he gets in line with them, and I was like, "This is great." Like, this is why this movie's great. It's like, they built up all this to this point where you, like, love these guys, and then now they're, like, in their element with their new fancy suits and their bobsled, and they're here to, like, win the day, and
Hmm.
you, like, are rooting for them, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's, like, awesome." It's totally, I guess, kinda goes back to what we were saying earlier, like, it's totally that sports movie thing, but, like, they really nailed it, and it really works.
Yeah, like the broadcasters having like the Jamaica shirt, the dad, the disappointed dad, kind of like coming around and loving his son and being there at the end as they're walking through with his shirt, as like a tacit endorsement and like, yes, son, follow this dream. You're great. I love you. Like I'm a sucker for those kinds of moments anyway, but I
Oh,
think they
yeah.
do a really good job with it.
I
Um,
liked that, with him and the dad, like, the night before because it's another callback to the conversation he had with Yule because the dad's in the elevator,
mhm.
and he's gonna let the dad go, and the dad says, "I'm gonna wait in the lobby," but he sees himself in the reflection behind the dad in the mirror, and he
Yeah.
says, "Pride, power," and he grabs the elevator. I was like, "Yes!" This is
Yeah.
so great. Like, there's so many awesome, like, little moments in here. That was one where I was like, "Hell yeah," and then after he tells him off and the dad leaves, he turns around and Yule's standing there, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Hell yeah," and he finishes the rest of the line, and I was like, "That's so great because he says badass mofo
Yeah.
that, takes no crap from no one, and I was like, "Oh, man, like, that gets me, dude." Like, that got me, I love that.
Yeah. Really good movie all around. Any final thoughts before we dive into the grading?
No, I don't think so. Like, I think we touched on pretty much everything. One small thing I noticed that I thought was funny is when they're sharing the Cokes over the bobsled,
Mhm.
there's like a production error where the different Cokes have different labels and then they also change hands randomly. Like, you could tell they like refilmed it, but it
Oh.
has like it's different eras of Coke bottles where one says Coke in like the bold font, one says Coca Cola in cursive, two of them have like red labels that say Coke. I am production me that it's totally just like they just grabbed Coke bottles out of the production room, but that was really funny to me.
Mhm.
And then it's just funny how it like the bottles switches hands randomly where they all have bottles, but they have different bottles in like different scenes with that.
Gotcha. So the continuity department dropped the ball a little bit on that one. Because yeah, that
Exactly.
that I think more than anything else in this movie, that feels like there's a Coca-Cola product placement. Like
Yep.
we like we're doing well. Let's all cheers with our Coke bottle. Okay, cool
And
guys.
then there's even like and I don't know if this was just like realism or world building or if Coke actually paid for this, but like even in the Olympic Village and stuff, there's like Coke advertisements because one of the billboards says like enjoy Coca-Cola
Mhm.
next to like whatever Olympic, whatever. Like it's like a sign and it's like in the background. I don't think they like put the camera directly on it, but I'm like, this is weird. That yeah,
Mhm.
there's just Coke all over the movie. But that was like a funny little like I noticed a couple weird production things like that that I just thought were like funny like that. And same thing with the, like, could notice they put in some of the real bobsled footage, and then they refilmed some of it, and you could kinda see when they did what. And then, the only other one I noticed I thought was kind of funny was when they show the Swiss team, and it's kinda Darius, like, idolizing them as they're, like, these perfect dudes. They, like, filmed it, they did it's in slow motion, but they didn't film it in slow motion. They just slowed the actual, like, speed of the footage down, I'm pretty sure because it's kinda, like, wonky when like if you do that, like if you just
It's
slow the playback speed.
well, it's yeah, I mean, yeah, it was 1993, so
Oh yeah,
it's
I just
certainly
thought that
not
was
the
funny
technology
though.
of the day, but yeah, it's what I think is funny about it is the action is in slow motion, but the dialogue is in real time. So they do the Eins, why, thry, whatever, and it doesn't sync up with like the movement that they're doing. um, I do remember that, yeah, being a thing because it is like it's almost the like Chariots of Fire kind of like bum 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 bum. Like you expect to hear that underneath, kind of what they're about to do. Um, But yeah, um, absolutely fun little movie here. So let's go ahead and grade it. From A plus to F, what do you want to give Cool Runnings here, Frank?
I think I give this one an A. Like, it's just a great, fun movie. I really enjoyed it. Like, I even if I said a couple things, or even like when I was talking about the conflict, or that's totally me just being like, well, if I was going to be critical, that's what I noticed. But
Mhm.
it's like, on the other hand, I just want to make it clear that like this is just a great movie. It's super fun. I really enjoy it, and like it holds up, and it's cool that it is just like this quick 90-minute like in and out movie that just kind of like gives you actually does a lot of character development and like just and gets you attached just in 90 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right with you. I think it's a solid A. It's a fun movie. It like holds up surprisingly well, all these years later, and yeah, just a good, fun, brisk time. Like doesn't outstay its welcome. Doesn't ever feel like it's doing like a disservice to like the maybe the cheesiest moment is the like slow clap at the end, but even that,
Yeah.
like I'm sure as a kid I loved that and ate that up, and it probably wasn't ruined until like every other movie did a slow clap kind of thing of that era. But yeah, it's still it's fun. Like the the evil German guy starts the slow clap,
Yep.
everybody gets into it. The bad guy that was, up against Candy's character gets in on it, and like everybody has like seen that this team is worthwhile and they deserve to be at the Olympics, and happily ever after kind of thing. They
It's
don't
like a
win a
feel
medal,
good thing.
but they still like yeah, they still proved it to themselves that they belong there. So yeah,
And one
yeah, go ahead.
My only thing, if anything, too, is I almost wish it was longer because I almost wish I had like more time with the characters or more funny scenes. But then I understand that probably would almost start detracting, right? Then we
Mhm.
start getting into like, oh, well, this wasn't funny or this was slow. Like it is a really tight 90 minutes that I think serves its purpose. But it definitely almost leaves me like wanting more of like, oh, I wish I had more time with these guys or like more comedy. But like, I mean, that's why, not everything needs to be like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah. Indeed. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. Unsurprisingly, it's going to be a lot of sports movies. We have Rookie of the Year. We have Miracle, Remember the Titans, Invincible, The Rookie, The Greatest Game Ever Played, Miracle in Lane 2, which you gave a nod to earlier, and McFarland USA. Extracurriculars, you watching anything else on Disney Plus these days, Frank? Following
Not
the end of the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, not at the moment now. Book of Boba Fett's over, and I rewatched Mandalorian season 1 and season 2 kinda in that same time frame, so at the moment, I don't really have much. Very excited for Moon Knight, though. No,
Mhm.
that's not what this podcast is about, but very excited.
Did you see the Chippendale Rescue Rangers trailer?
I have not. Did it look good?
You should watch the Chippendale Rescue Rangers trailer because we're definitely going to do a that D plus show on that movie at some point when it comes out. Yeah, it is. It is. It's. It's almost. Did you end up seeing Free Guy last year?
I haven't, but I saw that's coming to Disney Plus soon, and that's
Oh,
gonna
is
be
it?
one I'm gonna check out. So
I
I'm
hadn't
like,
even
'cause I
seen
heard
that.
it was very good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Free Guy. It's one of my favorite movies of last year. And it's very much a like breaking the fourth wall kind of like deconstruction kind of movie about the Rescue Rangers. Um, so yeah, definitely check out the trailer and let me know what you think about it. And because we will absolutely be doing like from the trailer, I think it's right up your alley. And
Yeah.
I think it'll make for a fun that D plus show when we eventually do it. Because that's I
I'm
think that's
ex
coming out in May.
I'm excited to check it out now because I haven't seen Free Guy, but based on what I've heard about it, that also does kind of sound like my kind of movie. Like a friend told me about a joke in it, and I was like, that actually sounds hilarious.
Yeah,
Like it's just a visual gag, but I was like, so I'm now I'm like, oh, if this is kind of like that, yeah, it probably is on my alley. So I'll have to check it out after this.
yeah. Um, all right. Well, that is gonna do it for that D plus show. Thank you, Frank, for joining me to talk about cool runnings today. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes on Twitter. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one, but since we were talking about cool runnings, I wanted to give a shout out to a song by Brian Altano. Brian Altano works at IGN. He's a member of the Comedy Button, and he also makes good music for anybody out there that doesn't know. But he has a song called Pride, and it actually samples the "What do you see in the mirror?" Pride power, and then it ends with him going like, "You really see all that?" Like, and it's a good song. And I really do like even that little sample that's in there. And when he got to the mirror and he said that, I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah. Yeah. So that was, it reminded me of the song and I recommend people check that out.
Very cool. Yeah, absolutely. Check out Brian Altano's wonderful work out there. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give a shout out to our Let's Plays every Tuesday and Thursday on youtube.com/that nerdy site. Right now, we are in the middle of my replay through the original Life is Strange game, through the Life is Strange remaster that came out recently. I mentioned this on something, it was probably on this week's That News You Care About, that I might like take a slight detour next week. Like I've already like recorded and scheduled all of the things out, but I might push a couple of the episodes out because obviously the next gen of Cyberpunk finally came out this week, and Horizon Forbidden West, of course, comes out this weekend. So I might record some Let's Plays and slot those in next week. But just check out our Let's Plays in general. They're fun. So yeah, you can go see that. As well as right now, we have a bonus Let's Play every week on Fridays with Cameron doing Friday Night Dying Light as he plays through Dying Light 2 every Friday evening, 6 p.m. Little bonus episode of That Nerdy Site Plays goes up, and he's doing that with a weird Friday Night Lights theme, because Cameron's a weird guy. So yeah, go check that out, especially if you like sports themed stuff. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. But yeah, that is going to do it for this episode. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.